thank you all for being with us today. I appreciate it, taking some time. And Ellicott City is the jewel of Howard County, or one of the jewels, I should say. And it certainly is a place that's near and dear to my heart, as well as yours as well. And so I'd like to maybe start off our conversations by everyone going around and just introducing yourself and maybe your connection to Ellicott City. And Kelly, why don't you start?
Hi. Well, I'm Kelly Secret, and I am a longtime resident on Main Street in Ellicott City. So I've been through 3 floods, and I love living there. It's a wonderful place.
And your business is?
Made on Main.
Yeah.
I have a little jewelry shop there as well. So all my eggs are in one basket. Yep.
I'm Donna Sanger. I have a family-owned store on Lower Main Street called Park Ridge Trading Company. And we've been there for about 6.5 years now.
I'm John Weinstein, and I lived in Howard County in Ellicott City, specifically for about 20 plus years, and I was the council member for District 1 during the 2 last floods.
Right, and you had your business on in Ellicott.
I had actually a good point. Yeah, so I owned a business in Howard County, and most of the time we had the business, it was on Main Street. We moved around up and down the street, but during one of the earlier floods back in 2011, I was in the Howard House. Yeah.
Well, great. Yeah, I mean, Ellicott City, I've lived in Howard County all my life, and Ellicott City has always been a big place for me and my family to go down to. And I remember when I was a kid going there. I remember going to the movie theater when I was a kid, and so it certainly is a special place. And then, you know, when John and I were elected in 2014, one of the first things we did together was talk about the concern about flooding in Ellicott City and what we could do. We put together the Ellicott City Work Group. So even before the flood in 2016, we were working on ways in which we could help. And you know, we had heard a lot of stories about folks after the 2011 flood and how things really weren't handled and how people didn't really feel they got the attention that the city, especially West End and Lower Main and the rest of Main Street. So, I mean, I'll start with you, Donna, because I know you purchased and started your business how soon before the 2016 flood?
We opened 3 months before the 2016 flood, and we had our ribbon cutting 2 weeks before the 2016 flood. We had about 6 feet of water. It was a complete wipeout of the business and, you know, everything.
Can you kind of explain kind of how that affected you and your family and what it was like for someone? Because I think folks hear about the floods, but they sometimes don't understand how it really has impacted people, not just professionally, but also personally. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's hard because being in Ellicott City on Main Street there is a passion project for everybody. We love the town. It's unique. And visitors that come assume that the flood problem's been fixed. They always ask that question. So, you know, they've taken care of this problem now, and they're just shocked when you say, really, no, it could flood tomorrow, just like it did. So it was difficult, but I have to say it was critically important to all of us that you and John were down there every day and not followed by a bunch of cameras. You were down there talking to people and checking in, and my photos of you cleaning mud out of the store, and you know, you were just there, and it was such a wonderful thing for both of you to do that. And it provided, I think, a really strong spirit that caused most of the businesses to come back. And, you know, we knew that you genuinely cared. And so, you know, it is difficult. We had 8 feet of water in 2018, so it was worse, although the county says it was not worse, but it was. And, you know, we won't do it again. And people need to understand that if we have another flood, which is entirely possible, without doing something more than they've been doing, it will happen just like it did.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, but I think I can speak for John. I mean, we were so inspired by you and all the folks in Ellicott City. So, I mean, we were fortunate, is a weird word to say, but just to get to know you so well and get to be able to be part of the community. I mean, it's something that has changed me forever. I mean, that is my hometown. Even though I live in Western Howard County, I consider my hometown Main Street, Ellicott City, because Robin and I go there all the time. We eat and shop there. We just love everyone there. But Kelly, how about with you? Because you've been there maybe longer, I know that. So how about for you and how the floods have affected you and your business?
It does change you forever. There's no way that it cannot. In 2011, I took 6.5 feet of water and lost everything I owned. I was attempting to go away on vacation when I got the call and came hauling back home, and all I wanted were my cats, and I had a photo of my dad holding me the day I came home from the hospital. Those are the only two things I wanted out of the house. And I got the cats, and I found the photo, but I didn't take it out of the frame. So the next morning it was gone. But you can't imagine what it's like to everything you've ever had, your photographs, everything is just gone. You really, once it's touched that muck, there's no saving it. And I remember thinking, and even to this day, it echoes in my head. I was like, we were lucky for that first one. Can you imagine if it was the whole town? Because I had a support network. People had clothing to give to me and household goods. I mean, literally, I didn't own a single stick of furniture. And to have to start over midlife, you're like, what the heck? And so fast forward to 2016,
Whole town.
the whole town. And 18, this can't be happening again. Yeah.
I can tell you, say 18 can't be happening again. In 16, and John, I'm not sure where you were when it first happened, but I was actually at an event. Oh, that's right, you were in Spain. Now I know why you're there. I remember you were there.
Oh, that's right. You came home from vacation for us.
Took me about 48 hours to get the airline to book me on a flight home.
I remember that now. I'm sorry. I knew that. But I was at an event at King's Contrivance. It was outdoors, and it kept on raining and stopping. And then it rained again and it would stop. And it kept on doing over and over again, which we later learned about how that happens. And then I remember coming home here, and the stream that goes into our driveway is completely covered. And I couldn't get into my house. And I realized this is really bad. And so that's when I contacted Ryan Miller and everybody, and they said, you need to come down here right now. And I didn't get down until after it was over. The reason I'm saying that is 2018 was different. In 2018, again, it happened in the afternoon, not in the evening. And John and I had gotten word, and we both got to the Office of Emergency Management.
Yeah. I was at a graduation party just around the corner from my house. I lived on the top of the town, right off College, and it started raining and thundering. I knew it was happening, so I stood up, and then my phone went off right as I stood up to go out. It took me about 45 minutes to drive the mile too, because I had to go all the way around to avoid. I had a couple of places where it was flooded. I actually stopped and had to pull people out of their car that was underwater in my neighborhood at the top of the hill. Right. So when you say it was worse, it was worse. I mean, absolutely.
No question. And John and I were both in emergency management, and we were looking at Ron Peters's cameras, and because of kind of what you were saying, I remember just looking at each other, we're going like, how can this possibly be happening again?
Yeah, it was on a personal level. It was terrifying because I was down there. My son lived in the building. He lived in one of the apartments above the store, and I couldn't reach him, and I didn't know where he was. And it turns out he was at the bottom of the street. He had gone down there to help assist somebody that had was vision impaired, and he said it went from his ankle to his waist in about 30 seconds. And he was going door to door, trying to find an unlocked door to be able to go up somewhere. So, I'm not sure even he realizes how close he came to some more terrible outcome. But he did manage to get up some stairs, and the footage from the bottom of the street in 2018 is footage he took out the window. So, yeah, it was on a personal level. It was terrifying.
I mean, and we have so many stories of people who have really done amazing things during that terrible floods. I mean, you hear about people who have courageous and what they've done to help people, and certainly a lot of our public safety folks as well. Just for some point of clarification, John, do you want to talk a little bit about what we were trying to do before the 2016 flood?
Yeah, absolutely. So what was interesting, you in your introduction, you talked about how the first thing you and I spoke about after we were elected, but you didn't point out we actually started planning before we were even sworn in. Yeah, we had I think it was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So it was just a couple weeks after the election, and you reached out to me, and we met on Main Street, of course, and started plotting out a comprehensive program, not only of addressing it from a physical standpoint, but also from a community standpoint. So when we identified establishing a team of residents and business owners, as well as experts, to be on a commission to focus on it and to help develop a plan that was built by the people of the town. And that was your MO. And the other thing that people should remember is that you knew I was a Democrat. I knew you were Republican, but you didn't care. You just knew that this was a pressing problem. And to your point about it being an important part of your life beside an important part of the county, that was the priority you set. And I knew it. I think quickly the people of town knew it. They knew it was different than the previous county executive who you succeeded.
Well, it's funny you say that because a lot of people don't know the story, and you probably don't know the story, Donna and Kelly, is that, of course, John was in Spain. And so Gary Smith was kind of like the voice for John because John was not here. And John was coming home right away. It wasn't like he was going to stay in Spain. He's coming back as fast as he possibly could. And so, we had a terrible snowstorm earlier that year in January, the biggest one we ever had in Howard County, one for one snow. And I remember after that happened, Lonnie Robbins, the chief administrative officer, looked at me and goes, well, you got through your one. You got through it. Like, that was going to be my one. And then we had a tornado that summer in June, I think it was, that came with the western part of the county. And this happened in July. And I remember I started learning how we'd have these senior policy group meetings every morning at 8 o'clock. Every morning, 7 days a week, just to kind of make sure everyone knows and all the folks from the county departments are there just so we're all on the same page. And we would get feedback. And I remember John asked to come.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, I'd be serious, everyone in my team said, don't let John in the room. Everyone said
Why?
that. Their point was, and I had a conversation with John about this, their point was, you're the executive, you can only have one. John's a legislator. He can be your voice to the council, that's fine, you can talk to him, but he shouldn't be in the room where we're hearing all the, I hate to say important, but all the stuff that's going on, the crucial stuff that's going on, because that's where decisions are being made, and John's not part of that. And you can't have two of those. And I mean, I'm telling you, I don't think there was one person in my administration who said he should be in the room. I let him in the room.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did.
Oh, I'm so glad I did. But I'll be honest with you, it was a learning experience for us too, because that had not happened before, according to other people in county administration. And I remember talking to John, saying, John, it's really important that you sit over in the corner here, and I got to be at the table, and we can talk, but don't try to say too much. And I don't think it was probably a matter of days, not weeks. John was sitting right next to me because we were a team. And it didn't matter he's a Democrat. It didn't matter if I'm a Republican. It's just we're a team. And John has certain skills that I don't have. He's a project manager. He understands a lot of things that I don't understand. And, you need to have people and trust people. And it worked out really, really well. But I think it was a real lesson because after the first flood, almost everyone said I was right. Who had said before, don't do it. Because they also saw who John was. And some of those folks didn't know John either. And I think that is the kind of thing you need to have in office. You need to have people who don't worry about, is someone going to get credit that I might get? I might lose this. If he's there, they're going to say, oh, my gosh, John's going to get the credit on the TV. Now you're not going to get it. Who cares? We worked as a team, I think, better than probably anyone could have ever thought. And so it was amazing. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying yes to me and no to the rest of the team. I will say, though, for the benefit of the people of not only the historic district, but really the county, by making that decision and my being in the room, I knew that all the decisions that were being made for the right reasons. It was a science-driven, technology-driven, engineering-driven, human response to a tragic situation. And I felt extremely comfortable that I could go down and talk to the people that I represented with confidence because I was in the room to say they are working on this. And I knew why some things were taking longer, and I could share that stuff because I was in the room, and it made it a lot easier. And quite honestly, the county benefited overall because the two parts of government were working very closely together, and as we know, it's not the case elsewhere in this country. So
It really isn't. Thank God we're not Washington. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the response in 2016 and how things went. I mean, I know it was difficult. I mean, I could tell you it was really hard I know John and I and everyone else, when do we let people come back in? Remember how it was always like, how are we going to get back in? And I remember the day that we had arranged, and St. Peter's was so wonderful to have that be the volunteer hub kind of thing. I don't know if you remember, John, the first day we were going to have people come in for their 15 minutes. The guys came and said that there's a pole that might come down and we can't have people come in. And I remember having to go to St. Peter's and tell people, and John was probably doing it, and you can't go down today. And of course, you guys are all so frustrated because you can't get to your homes, you can't get to your businesses. I mean, so there's so many logistics we have to deal with. But I have to admit, between Rec and Parks and DPW and the public safety folks, I mean, we really did have a good team that was really trying to work together pretty well. But for you, let's say the floods. So the floods happened. What's the next thing that happened to you all? What did you were out of the town for a while. You couldn't, where'd you go live? I mean, you were.
Well, so I lost the foundation to my house. So there was a 12-foot sinkhole in my front door, and there's only one way in and out. So I knew it was going to be a long time before I could get back in. And I also heard whispers of potentially taking the building down for safety reasons. It was never said to my face but I heard the soft talk behind me, and the idea of losing something or losing everything twice, I can't even begin to describe it. So luckily, when they rescued, would you like to hear the story of rescue?
I would love to hear that.
So watching the water go down the street, I see a keg go floating down Main Street. I'm like, somebody lost a keg. Then I see a cluster of 4 kegs. And I was like, wait a minute. And the water's getting higher and higher. And I had a planter out front. And all of a sudden there was this wave that just washed over this big, heavy planter. And it was like a magician. Poof, it was gone. And instantly the water was up to my steps, up to the door. And I'm like, okay, this is bad. This is really bad. And I felt the house shake when the foundation went. I didn't know what it was. There's a picture of me sitting in my doorway, swinging my feet, looking down, because that hole was still filled with water. So I didn't know just how deep it was. And as the water started to recede, I see bubbling, and it's a gas line break. Yeah. So I'm writing. I grabbed a notebook, and I'm writing with a Sharpie, holding up signs from the door, because the cell tower that was on the flour mill went down. So we couldn't even reach 911. We couldn't reach anyone. The residents, we have a 2-way emergency communication system with 2-way radios. And that's how we radioed out to friends that we need help. And this is what it's like. So the fire and rescue went in to someone's apartment 3 doors up, came out on the rooftops, down the roof, walked down, went into the antique store next door, and used an axe to chop a hole in my bedroom wall that was 2 feet wide and 3 feet tall. And I literally was pulled through the wall. And you can't take anything with you. And off you went, and it would be months before I got back in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No. And that's it was so hard for us because we knew you needed to go back and get things. I mean, businesses, they needed either cash registers and things like that. They couldn't get things that were really important. How about with you, Donna, after the flood?
Well, I first heard about it. My son was living in New York City at the time, and I had been down there till about 6, and it started to rain biblically. I mean, it was just incredible. I had pockets full of water by the time I got down to my car, and people were laughing at me because, I was really getting drenched because I never have an umbrella. And so he called me and he said, Mom, I'm looking at this video on YouTube, and I kind of think it's your store. And my first thought looking at the video was, wow, I wonder how they did that. I thought it was CGI. I honestly did, because you can't wrap your mind around what you're seeing. And it was summer, and I had a sign in the window that said, "Make a splash."
Oh, God.
and it had different colored lights. Yeah, Mother Nature has a sense of humor. And you see the lights under the water, and then all of a sudden you see all the lights go out when the electricity went out. So first thing I did was call my husband, who was up at our cabin doing some repair work, and I said, you got to come home. It's gone. He said, what do you mean it's gone? I said, the store, it's gone. And then I sat around. I just couldn't just sit still, so I drove down and stood at the top of the street with a couple of the other business owners. And you were there, Alan, I remember. And you came over to me and just kind of took my hand and said, I have to warn you, there's nothing left. Brace yourself, because there's going to be nothing left. I'm getting chills just thinking about that. But that was sort of how it started. And I had one personal item in the store that I fretted over for the next 2 weeks, and that was my great-grandfather's mustache cup, because it said his name and then it said grocer. And because we are a food business and we took his town's name, I was worried about that. It ended up being the only thing in the store that wasn't broken. But I'm watching the news footage, subsequently, and I'm like looking at things. They're down by the river and they're showing video, and I can see my merchandise down there. I'm like, hey, that came out of my store. So was a real sense of unreality to it, because your mind just doesn't process that. But there was such a, we're all in this together. It was a very united effort, and we felt like we were kept in the information loop, that you could tell you genuinely cared, and you were there. Like I said, you came through every day if you weren't working down there, and that really, I think, allowed us to feel that coming back was a possibility.
And that certainly was. We wanted to make sure everyone knew that we would do whatever we could, because I had heard stories about what happened in 2011, and I wanted to make sure people never forgot. And that's why we did many walks through West Main, because a lot of times folks in the West Main didn't feel that all the business district seems to get more. And we made sure almost every night that we walked through West Main every night to see what people needed. And that goes back to, we could use a dumpster here, we could use something over here, and then we could get it done the next day because we were walking around talking to people. So we did, we did get, I don't know how to say, got through it. We came back in 2018.
We were the first business to open on Lower Main. We had a 3-month goal because we have tenants, families with children living upstairs, and they had 3 months of Red Cross housing. And we had one tenant who was expecting, so we had to be sure she got back in the 3 months, and the following week had her baby. So, that was our goal, and we just put ourselves to it, and we tried to work through some of the special procedures that were set up to expedite the approvals and so forth. So, that was hugely important.
No, and I'm sure they appreciate the work that you did to do that. And when did you get back? You said, of course, it's months, but when did you get back?
Actually, I think I was one of the first people back.
Oh, really?
Even after that, they managed to repair the foundation, but I lived in the house without hot water or a stove because the gas lines hadn't been returned yet. Okay. But I wanted to be home so badly that I was willing to put up with the smell of the town. Yeah. It's a smell you never forget. And
hot days and
because also so that I could be there to try to help in any way that could be useful to folks.
I remember Kelly, being there. There were several people that did things, like Jenny Porter from Little Market. She was bringing sandwiches to everyone.
I was sitting on the back of the truck holding the wagon. Oh. So yeah, Jenny Porter from Little Market Cafe would make lunches for all the volunteers down there, and we would roll through town passing out bottles of water and food.
The sandwiches, yeah, and hand sanitizer, because I know you talked about us cleaning out the muck, but we know it wasn't just mud.
No, it wasn't.
And yeah. No, to your point, though, I mean, that's the thing. It was about resiliency, and people urgently wanted to get back to where things were. And I think we did after 16. That was. Yeah,
and in November we had the official opening. But I mean, I also, the other story I can remember about caring for people is how Shoemaker would make people weigh themselves. Do you remember this?
And he wrote their weight on their back. I was like, oh, really?
And he did it in kilograms, so people didn't know how many pounds they weighed. No, he was.
Because he wanted to know if they had lost too much water.
Yeah, he made them come out after an hour or two because it was so hot.
Yeah, it was like in the 90s and 100% humidity. It was, and they're in Tyvek suits.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was all about, I mean, we were all together. I mean, there really was this sense of community, and people outside wanted to help, which was awesome. And it was a huge volunteer effort to try to get that all organized. And then you had to have remember you had to have your little tags. And
I saved mine.
I still have mine too. It's actually in my car, just in case.
Mine hangs on the key peg by the front door.
Now, and a lot of people don't realize that many of those volunteers were county employees.
Oh, yeah.
The county had an excellent program of allowing people to come in, and they worked like maniacs.
County executive had a program like that.
Yes, I think so. We really felt that if any town could come back from something, that we would.
And we did. And we did really. I mean, I'm telling you, we were the model, and people were talking about how it was the greatest comeback, and I mean, it's amazing, and how great it was that November. I guess it was Small Business Saturday, right? We did this. We did the opening, and then I don't want anyone to think that then we stopped. No, we were still figuring how's the best way to make sure this doesn't happen again. And John's working really hard, and we had the CAG. Remember the community advisory group, and former Senator Roby was a big help to try to help be some leadership there, and he brought calmness to it as well, and then 2018 comes, and we talked about already about how devastating that was.
Before we move on to that, I just want to the transition. So understand, like literally right before the flood, we rolled out the results and the plan from the community group that we had established at the very beginning. And so we already had a basis to work from, and unfortunately, the flood happened in 2016, and we converted that to the CAG to take what we had developed, what that group had developed and recommended, and started again as a baseline to build on what had already been planned. So I think the planning happened a lot faster after 2016 for what we were going to do to address what had occurred then. So.
Right, and I don't want to rush. If anyone wants to add more, but my point being is 2018 really did change the whole conversation.
It did.
I mean, in 2016, I think we all were told it's a 1,000-year storm. It's not going to happen for another 100 years at the most, and we were really focused on getting everyone back. And then when 2018 happened, it became a new normal.
I have to say the election then was a tremendous blow for us because we felt we'd lost all of that support and help, and dedication to it. And the sense of exigency was lost. It no longer became a priority. I couldn't even get them to put a dumpster back so that we could continue cleaning out the building. It just wasn't important. And that never really changed. There were lots of cameras and lots of announcements and so forth, but in terms of actual help and change, it just wasn't there, and we lost that momentum completely.
I mean, we could talk about that a little bit too, but also it's just the whole framework of what we were going to do after 2018 flood changed, because now we knew this is going to happen more often. I mean, there's definitely climate change happening. We got to figure out how we're going to save people, because we talk so often about, or don't talk enough, I don't think, about people we lost. We lost 2 during the flood in 2016. I always tell people when they come to me and say we lost 2 people, I say no, we lost 3. Because John Pasolowski, and then we lost the gentleman, the sergeant in the 2018. It's like, people's lives we're talking about. And I remember John and I were talking to people, and a lot of people in the community was like, folks, we're talking lives here. And I know some people were concerned about, well, this building is, I like looking at it or whatever. It's like, folks, we're talking lives. And I remember many people in the community coming to me and saying, Allan, you need to fix this town before you open it ever again. I remember we had that town hall at Howard High School, and a couple of the business owners came to me and said, and of course we couldn't close the road forever. We couldn't do that. I think their point being was, you need to fix this. It can't be a Band-Aid anymore. You need to fix this, and you need to make it so that we feel safe, so that every time we have a storm warning, we don't, feel nervous and anxious, and we don't want our children to be down there. And for a business owner, no one's going to come down and be going to your business because they're worried about the possibility of a storm. And so, I mean, I don't know, John, if you want to talk, we just kind of really geared it up. And the sense of urgency, as you were saying, was there after May of 2018.
And there was hope.
Yeah. And we worked with experts. I mean, John said it earlier. I mean, I'm not the expert on how to fix Ellicott City. And I think you need a county executive who's willing to listen to the experts and not trying to figure out what's best for the political future or what's best, looks best on a soundbite. What's best for the town, regardless. And why don't you talk about what happened after 2018?
Sure, yeah. So, and again, I think we were starting from a good baseline. Some of the plans we had already put into place were part of a new bolder plan. And we had, I mean, people might not have realized this because we considered lots of different things after 16, including taking down some buildings because of, in some cases, because of the damage to those buildings. So we had started those conversations, what if? And then after 2018, not only to become abundantly clear, but all the science, the information that engineers were providing us, and also experiences from other towns around the country, around the world, right? We had some models to look at where they, there was a town, and I can never remember the town in England, but you talk about historic towns, some of the buildings that are hundreds and hundreds of years old, but the safety of the people who live there was paramount in places like that. And so it brought into the forefront what is the thing we can do most quickly that will have the biggest effect. And it was clear from the science and the engineers, widening the river and slowing the speed of the water. Because as much as depth is important, and it makes it sounds really nice when you say, oh, we're 1 foot, 2 foot lower, this plan, that plan. The thing that we were focused on was the most important element, and that was slowing the water down, because that's what you gave a great example, and unfortunately you did too with your son and with the magically disappearing giant planter, right? If that water goes fast, it takes a lot with it. So we looked at those buildings, and of the ones we looked at to take down, they were the ones that were causing a lot of the problems, especially down on Lower Main.
Oh, we saw the trees going through Kaplan.
And blocking them up. Yeah, I mean, I remember the first flood, the giant tree that went through Kaplan's, right? And then what the plan that was put forward, we didn't know there was a pandemic coming, but the plan that was put forward was to create an open space park, which had we moved at the pace we were moving and working with the federal government and the state, which we had many, many meetings with after 16 and continued in 18. I remember in August, we were sitting around the table with secretaries of several departments of the state talking about how to make this happen. And they were all on board to help. And they were going to help expedite the process to create this safer environment. And that was a core thing. And unfortunately, politics took a radical turn. And I'll have to say it, the current county executive was not involved in those conversations, didn't care to listen to the science at the time. He decided to put politics before the safety of the folks there and came out against the plan for no other reason other than to score political points.
And it was sad to have people who were really not part of our community be having all these opinions and, oh, I like driving through the town. Okay, I'm glad you like driving through the town, but people live here and people have businesses here, and we need to make sure. I mean, I remember when some people we were talking about taking the buildings down, and one of the options we talked about was, well, let's just take it out above what's above the river, but we'll leave the facades. And I remember sitting with our fire chief, John Butler, and he looked. He looked at me and goes, Allan, if you do that, I'm not putting one of my people in those buildings ever, because I'm not going to put a firefighter in harm's way to go up to a second floor of a building that's only 15 feet wide. Why in the world would you put my people in harm's way? If you're going to do that, you just take these buildings down and make sure everybody is safe. And I can remember that like it was yesterday. He was very adamant that I'm not putting people in harm's way to go, and you should not have anyone in those buildings if you're going to have a facade there.
Well, and it was very frustrating as a trying to operate a business on the street, because the people that would come in, of course, and still 4 years later, it's the same conversation. But then there was this emphasis. Well, I used to come here on dates when I was in high school, so I don't want any buildings taken down. And I always said to them, you have to understand, we lose some buildings, or if we have another flood, we lose the whole town. So do you want to lose the whole town, or do you want to lose just a few of the buildings? Nobody wants to take down buildings. And they were always people with a very tangential connection to the town, because the property owners, the residents, the businesses, we understood what was at stake here. And we love the town and the buildings too. But, and we still hear that now from people. But the interesting thing now is a lot of people are coming because we've had these disasters, and they do always want to talk about the floods. And they always believe that in 4 years, this problem has been taken care of. And when you say nothing has happened that would change the same outcome now, and Hurricane Ida being a good example, it was headed straight towards us. We expected to lose everything again. And at the last minute, it turned up north and hit New York instead, and New Jersey, and terrible damage. Had that come through Ellicott City, there is no doubt, but it would have been a complete wipeout. And those buildings may be old, and a lot of them have stone bases, but there's a limit to how much those buildings can withstand. So,
and how historical they are. There's really only one truly, of the buildings we're looking at, there's only one truly historic building. That was where the T on the Tiber was located, and we had a plan that would have had block by block move that up to next to the courthouse to preserve the only historic building. The other ones, as you said, they're old. Some of them had been stuccoed, and they didn't look anything like they did and couldn't be restored. But they were built over the water. And I'll never forget somebody right after 2018 said, might have been Fred Dorsey, but that, we spent all these decades trying to fight the river. It was time to admit the river had won, and that the town that was built 250 years ago wasn't intended for this purpose any longer, and it was time to adapt, as many, many other historic towns around the country, around the world, have adapted to this unfortunate change in the climate. And I think best, right, in terms of the weather, what it's done. I mean, every time it's dark and gray, or worse when you get like Friday, where it turned green, the sky turned green, and it was dark and foreboding, and people now, just especially the people who live there, you're like the weather person, so.
Well, it's really the cat.
Well, during the pandemic, while other people were learning to bake sourdough bread, I was taking continuing education meteorology classes. There we go. But I mean, for anyone out there who isn't super familiar with the layout of town, that those buildings that John's talking about that span across the river, they create choke points, and basically they become a dam, and it causes the water to back up all the way up past the wine bin. And a lot of people that I've talked to don't realize that Upper Main and West End flood as well. And
because of those buildings, that water wants to go home to the river. And you can fight it all you want, but Mother Nature is going to do what she wants to do. And didn't they discover, I think I saw there were channels up by where Ellicott Mills Drive and Main Street, that when that fell in, what was unearthed was that there had been like a waterway with the stones. Right. That wasn't where the waterway is today. Right. So Mother Nature dug out that waterway and put it back where it was before. So, and would we have lost that old courthouse if, we had been able to take some of those buildings down to open up the water path?
But you're right, though. I mean, we need to learn to live with the river, and Fred was right. And so that's what we try to do. We tried to figure out ways in which we could do that, and it was not a smart idea to build buildings on top of a river. It just, I don't know who said that was a good idea back then, but it was not a good idea. And the other thing about it was, is the viability of Ellicott City in the future. I mean, it was also a goal of John, mine, and I think the experts too, talking about how, we always hear about the upper Maine, they get all the restaurants there, all the action there, and there's not as much action and traffic on lower Maine. And when the experts talk to us about how we need to expand the stream channel, we need to make it so the velocity goes slower. Well, one of the results of that would be that we could open up this area and have a very nice open air, I don't know what to call plaza or whatever, place where people could be. Because as you all know as well, 90% of the time that river is very small. And you could have festivals, band concerts. You could do so many things down the bottom of the hill, and it really would revitalize economically Ellicott City. And I think so many people kind of poo-pooed that idea. And I thought, folks, let's take advantage of this opportunity where we can protect the town and do this. And I really think we're suffering with that now, because if you drive through, of course, now you still just see everything's the same as it was, 5 years ago. And we could actually have these tiered areas where people could be. And, then, of course, if there's a storm coming, no one could be down there. Everyone get out, and we could protect people.
There's another element, Alan, that I think, again, people probably don't realize because we were focused on what was going on to recover from the 18 flood. But in that conversation was as well, and it had started previous to that, was how do we look at the Ellicott City as a whole? And we're talking about the courthouse, which you and I worked on to ensure that we built a new courthouse that was about 100 years overdue to be replaced. But we even started at that point talking about how do we integrate the redevelopment that would need to take place on an empty courthouse building, and how do we combine that with the changes that we were proposing with. So it wasn't just let's tear down 10 buildings and leave it alone. It was creating the plaza. It was looking at building a structure in Lot D that could accommodate the businesses that would be affected and have a place for them to move to. And it was also about talking about what to do with the old courthouse, which we had started that conversation. And then for 3 years plus, nothing happened on that. And we all knew years and years ago, while we were still in office, it was going to be going away. And an amazing project to get it done as quickly as it did because of the program you set in place. But that was the comprehensive plan, again, that was ignored. And those sorts of things would have drawn more people to Ellicott City and brought them down on Maine, as well as have something else to attract them. So there's a lot of what hasn't been done, and beyond the specific things to fix the infrastructure, it was also to rebuild, like you were saying, make this a place that people want to come to for the next 250 years.
You're right. I mean, I could tell you, Mike at Playground, he was purchasing the building after the 2016 flood, and I remember him coming to me and John and saying, the only reason I came, because you told me you're going to fix it. That's the only reason I came. He goes, and then, and he's a very strong supporter of Ellicott City, very involved in the community. His whole family is, Matt, of course, and Ellen. And it just kind of hit me, I came because you gave us hope.
Well, I think we've lost a lot of that hope. We all just hold our breath when rain is predicted. We watch the rain very carefully, always. I have 2 employees. One will not come to work if it's going to rain. And I don't blame her. I really don't. I totally understand that.
Yeah, I can understand that too. So since 2018, and I got to tell you, because I'm certainly have great respect for John, but when May happened, he had his primary come up very quickly. He just put everything away, and he focused on the town, which is what you expect people to do who are responsible, and he did that. And he put his own personal, political, whatever, future aside. And that's what you expect from leaders. And that's what he did. And so John was down there working. We were all down there working. But now, most people walk through town and go, and you say they think it's fixed. I mean, what do you see, though? I mean, there's nothing that you can see that says it's been fixed. So far, since 2018, what's happened? I mean, there's 2 stormwater ponds that are in construction, it's my understanding. But those are in John's and my plan, which I'm very confident to say would be done a couple years ago at least. It's just the sense of urgency is completely gone. There's talk, but as I learned many, many years ago, talk is cheap, and actions speak. And I think there's a real sense, and you guys can let me know more, that there just really isn't any desire to do anything. And then we haven't talked about the tunnel yet.
Do you want me to Say something about the tunnel.
I mean, well, no, I think it's important for us to talk about it. I mean, and you, the tunnel was something that we discussed when we were in office, and the experts were coming to us with all the different kind of plans because, again, after 18, like I said, it was a new normal. And, we had to realize that we couldn't just Band-Aid this thing, or we couldn't just assume it's not going to happen for another 100 years. We knew it could happen tomorrow. And go ahead, John.
Yeah, the simple, my simple take on the tunnels are exactly you said. We talked about them extensively. We modeled them extensively. The difference in the impact on the flow of water through town was not only not worth the expense, but more importantly, not worth the risk, because it was the most risky of the options. And many engineers talking about one, it may not actually be able to be built because of the engineering challenge. Two, if it were built, just the topography alone would make it potentially inefficient or ineffective in a storm if the intake got blocked, which was very possible. And then just the construction, they literally said, we can't figure out how we get the equipment into town to actually build this tunnel. And then we could talk about, tunneling through granite and all that. So all that, and that's all information we shared publicly, and particularly with the council, right? And that was the information I brought. And I had private meetings with each member of the council individually about this.
We had a whole public hearing where you and I sat there and presented to the council.
But that wasn't news to them at that point because they already were aware of it. And so the only thing I can take away, as I said earlier, there was the shift in being against the plan by the current county executive while in the midst of this campaign. His campaign for county executive was purely political. And honestly, the tunnels sounds good. It's a good soundbite. Talk is cheap because there were people who were in favor of it, and it sounds like a grand, bold thing. But it's not something that'll be done in anybody's lifetime. And we know that in the 4 years since the county executive has been in office, by the end of his term, and obviously we're hoping it's the end of his only term, is that nothing will have been done. Zero. No projects will have been completed, maybe a couple of minor ones. But again, all those had been started before he took office. And there might be a couple more that get done before the end of the year, not likely before his end of his term. And this plan hasn't even been started. They haven't gotten approvals. And even if they get approvals, we're talking about, I think we had heard a 7 to 10 year construction time frame. So it'll be, let's be optimistic, it only takes 7 years, and it does start in 2023. So in 2030 will be a ribbon cutting, which we know this county executive loves ribbon cuttings. He won't even be in office in 2030, but there'll be a ribbon cutting for a tunnel, which at that time, even still, we probably won't be sure it'll work, and it'll be technology that was based on stuff in 2015, 16, 17, 18, not that then. So
yeah, question for you guys: do you think the tunnel is going to be built?
Not in my lifetime. I will tell you, I mentioned it to you all before we sat down. We decided to sell our building, and we had planned, to be this was a lifelong dream for me to open this store, and I had to wait till I retired to do it, and it meant everything. And so, we're committed this second time to come back, but my family members discussed it, and we made a pact that if it happened a third time, we will not come back, because the emotional toll and the physical toll it took on everybody was too much. That cost was too much, and it would be, since nothing has really happened, it would be expecting a different outcome from the exact same circumstances. It's like Charlie Brown and Lucy in the football. Yes. Once is resiliency, twice, okay, maybe a little crazy. Third time is just stupid. And so, for us to make that decision, because we didn't want to be responsible for those families when the next flood comes.
And it is a when, it's not an if.
And no, it's not. And I tell people that all the time, and they just look at you because they can't comprehend that anybody would just let this sit for 4 years. They've all assumed that, we have these little signs of panicked people running uphill. That's the fix. No, they told us they didn't want to put the sirens at the bottom of the street when we couldn't hear them up the street because they're too expensive and they didn't want them to wash away. I swear, I'm not making that up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we essentially, I wouldn't say given up, but we are realistic about the chances of there being anything substantial in this administration to do anything to prevent the problem again. So all I can do is try to educate people when they come in and ask about it, and they always do, and explain to them what it really is needed to be done. But they all just don't believe that nothing really has happened. And they say, well, why not? It's not a priority anymore.
Well, and I think also that it's the problem has been aggravated. I mean, if you look at the townhome community that went in off of 103 across from Target, I can tell you, I have video that it has turned Old Columbia Pike into the log flume ride at Kings Dominion. The water that comes down that road that did not before they completed that project. So, all these studies that were done, it was, given we have this much grass, this trees, this open space. So this is our marker. So if we do X, Y, and Z, it'll help to alleviate. Well, that's all well and good. But now you've changed the rules because you allowed building within the watershed. And
I'm going to have to comment on that development. And that is, people should go back and look at when that was approved and how changes to that plan were voted on by the county executive when he was on the council. And that goes back 13, maybe 12.
13 was comprehensive rezoning last time.
So it might have been during that process. I think there might have been an amendment that went through that allowed for that to be more dense. The original plan was to be retail, right? And which I remember I was living there. They were going to put Lowe's there, but we were not in favor of that either. But members of the council who are still in active office, one being the county executive, I think, has facilitated that and other developments.
College Avenue has a lot more coming too. You probably have heard about that. Dr. Taylor's property.
Well, and I think we did a dramatic pause on that development at Top 103, and we. Right. Well, you signed it. So, but
had the effort on that.
Well, and so you needed to go back to the actions, right? So the current county executive has a lot at his disposal that he can do to prevent additional development, to slow it at least until things are really evaluated,
and until some of these dry ponds are in place. Like let the fixes that you all had started, let them be completed before you start adding more water into the.
I think there's the solution there is to look at the political contributions of developers in Howard County, because if it's so obvious as to where the money has been going and which developments are being approved and which are being increased in terms of density and impact on the area.
Where's your money coming from now, Allan?
Well, now I'm doing the Citizens Election Fund. John was the author of that, as you guys probably know. And in all fairness, I wasn't a big proponent of it at the beginning, mostly because of the way it was funded. And I'm getting a lot of flack because I didn't support it back then. But it was never that I was against public campaign financing. I actually was in the state Senate and voted for the bill to give Howard County the option to even do this. And so I've supported public campaign financing all the time. I just wasn't excited about how the funding was. And John, I had a lot of discussions about that. And so a lot of people were making hay about, Allan's opposed it before. I am so excited about it. And I think it has been so helpful for me this time because I don't need to go get favors from those folks. I don't need to ask the people who are the big money folks in Howard County to help me. Who I ask to help me now are the people who can give me $25. Someone gives me $25, a Howard County resident, the county gives me $175. So a county resident gives me $50, the county gives me $350. That is incredible. So someone who says, I can't give you $1,000, Allan, I can give you $50. Well, you're really giving me $400. And I think that's made the folks who are, maybe never thought they had a way to participate financially to feel like they have a real say in it. Because I can't take any contributions from any businesses, any development companies, any political action committees, any political parties, only from individuals, and no individual can give me more than $250, period. So nobody is going to have any – the whole idea, if you look at it, was to take away the influence of big dollars. And this has totally taken away the influence of big dollars. I have not met with one, quote, big donor person the entire time I've been running this campaign. I have met with hundreds of individuals in their homes with a small group of 30 or 40 people talking about the issues they care about, and they know they have as much influence on me or more than anybody else. And that's the way it should be. But the other thing I would bring up, Donna, and then I was going to say earlier, is I wish people could go back and look at the voting records of the zoning board members for the last year. I mean, I was a zoning board member for 6 years, from 1998 to 2004, because that's the county council was a zoning board. Dr. Ball was on there from 2006 until 2018. I think it's true. I'm pretty positive it's true that every single effort to have increased density during his time on the zoning board, he voted yes. In the fact that no other council member during that time did the same. Some of them voted no. And so you think about it, it takes a while for these projects to get in the pipeline. So things that are happening now were all things that were approved maybe 7 years ago or voted on. And so in 2013 was the last comprehensive rezoning. But think about how much more development we're having because of those changes that were done. And some people like to blame the person who's in office. Well, a lot of times it's the things that happened many years earlier. Well, it's hard for him to say that because he was on the zoning board for the 12 years before. And I think that's something that has to get out there. But you're right, though. According to what we've looked at, there's one developer who, since the election, he and his companies have given the current county executive $57,000. $57,000 from one developer and the company, because they have multiple companies and they try to figure out ways in which they can do things. And I tell people, I did that for years. That's the only game you had in town. Now we have a new game, and I've decided to go with the new game, and he hasn't, which is very, very frustrating.
So, so you bring up a good point of the process, how it is, and how the current county executive has taken advantage of it to the detriment of the voters and average citizens. But he had every opportunity to participate in this very same program. In fact, he voted for it twice.
And what did he tell you before you put the program in?
So when I conceived this idea with, and I had partner in this and Councilwoman Terrasa, but actually the idea came from my son, who passed it in a few other states. So so he brought the idea to me, and anyway, but as I talked with folks, I had a one-on-one conversation with Dr. Ball, and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure I want to do this. It's really important. It's one of the most important things in terms of philosophically what I believe in as an elected official to try and accomplish." And he said, "Well, but what happens if you run for county executive someday?" And I said, "And?" He goes, "This will prevent you from being able to raise a lot of money." I'm like, "Absolutely not. It's designed to do exactly the opposite, to level the playing field, to allow pretty much anybody to run." And there are several people that I know who decided to run for office because now it was feasible from a financial standpoint. But that aside, the other thing he said to me was, "Well, I'm never going to use it." This is before the bill was even presented. And so he voted for it. He'll tell you because he supported it, but he voted for it because that was what was politically expedient, and he knew that the county executive was going to veto it. And I knew the county executive was going to veto it because, as he just said, we talked. I mean, a virtue of the fact that we had that very first meeting in November, you and I talked about a lot of different things. And I remember the conversation. You called me and said, I'm going to veto this. And I said, "I know." And and then we talked about, things that you would change, you would like to see change to support it. And we had that conversation a few times. And I knew I had the vote, so I knew I didn't need to adjust to what the county executive was asking. But that aside, it went forward and it passed, and he had plenty of time. I think recently at a forum, Executive Ball actually said there wasn't enough time for him to participate in the program when he was asked whether or not he was going to participate in the program. And that is just a bold-faced lie. We built the program so it would be in place in plenty of time for this election cycle. That was the intent. In fact, some of the people who were real proponents of it were wanting me to get it in place for the 2018 cycle, which it was going to be way too. We literally had run out of time just based on various things we had accomplished to get it done. And just the other point of it is, and his comment about you're never going to raise enough money. So let's just look at the numbers. The number of people who've donated to Allan's campaign since October. It wasn't even October. It was November when you were actually.
Our first one was the end of October is our first campaign contribution because it takes a while to get organized. But think about it. I got organized from September to October. It wasn't too late for me to get organized. How could it be too late?
Yeah, so you announced in September, and in October, the fund, all the mechanics had been established. And since that time to today, to end of April, more individuals have donated to Allan's campaign than have donated to Calvin's campaign in 4 years. Okay, that goes to show you that the design of it worked. We knew it was going to work because it was working in Montgomery County. It was working all over the country. So we're got a little bit off track here. But I think it's when you start peeling back why nothing's been done in 4 years, when you start peeling back why he's putting forward these plans that won't see fruition until 2030, it's because it is not in his interest. And the CEF, the Citizen Election Fund, and is just a reason, something for people just to think about when they're getting ready to go vote in November. Why?
Yeah. I think it's funny because people go, well, Allan, you're a hypocrite. You shouldn't be able to use it. What are you talking about? I mean, the whole idea was to take big money out, regardless of how I might have differed originally. I certainly support doing the plans. And let's go back to the big picture here. The big picture is to get big money out of political campaigns. It's out of my campaign. There's no big money in my campaign, period. And I tell people what's so great about it is so when I get elected in November and Howard Hughes wants to come to me and say, I want to do something in Ellicott City, I'll still meet with Howard Hughes. But now it won't be, well, Allan, we did this for you. We raised you $50,000. We need you to do this, this, and this. No, it's going to be, okay, Howard Hughes, what good is it going to be for Howard County? And there could be some good things. I'm not saying all developers are not bad. Most developers are very good. They're doing what they can. They try to help out that they can. They play by the rules. I mean, unfortunately, there are some that are bad apples that make everyone else look bad. But the point being is now those conversations can be so much different. It's not going to be, I helped you, you need to help me. It's going to be, Allan, we want to do this. Okay, tell me why it helps Ellicott City. Tell me why it helps Savage or Clarksville or Western Howard County. Tell me how it helps our community, and I'm more than happy to work with you on it. I'm not saying you're doing a bad thing, but it's not how it helps me. That's gone. Now it's how does it help Howard County? And I think that's going to be so refreshing. And the other thing we didn't talk about is I've made the commitment that when we're successful in November, I'm going to stay in the program because I'm allowed to run one more time because it's 2 consecutive terms. If I decide to run again, I'll be the only county executive in Howard County history who will not take any donations from any businesses, political action committees, development companies, only donations from individuals, no more than $250 during my time in office. Now, that would really be earth-shattering because there's no way that someone could say, hey, I want this right now. I'll give you $2,000 for your campaign if you do this for me. Nope, that's not part of the game. We're going to do this what's best for Howard County. And I'm excited about the opportunity of that happening. I really am. And people tell me all the time, you look so happier. You look so much fresher, Allan, than you did for the last 20 years running campaigns. Because the worst thing is trying to get that support from people. It is. The raising money, you spend half your time trying to get people to give you a $5,000 check. Now I spend all my time trying to get people to give me $50. It's great. I love it. And I have never felt so fresh and so revived and so excited. And the thought of being the county executive without dealing with those issues, but focusing just on the people. And I always thought I did before, but now I could just sense how it's going to be even more that the power is really going to be with the people.
Well, and that goes back to one of the core things that you both have said, and that is urgency, right? So that urgency that was there in 2018 and from 2014 through 2018, before the change of administrations, it returns day one. It returns day one because there are no other priorities. There are lots of priorities. Education's a priority, all these things. But Allan, those were priorities for you the 4 years you were in office, and you managed those priorities quite well. So I obviously I'm biased toward Ellicott City, and when I was on the council, and a lot of our conversations, even before the floods, were about how do we bolster Ellicott City because it is important to the health of the entire county. And I think there's a great opportunity to come back and look at it, not only about the plans we've discussed, but also starting to bring back into the discussion the courthouse and what to do at the top of the hill.
To me, it's such a clear choice that people need to make, not based on party, but based on the person themselves. I know that you have the track record. I know that you can provide that leadership and that you'll actually do something. So to me, it's a choice between saving Ellicott City or letting it be the, luck of the draw as to whether or not it even exists 5-10 years from now. People need to understand that is really the choice, because we will lose it. Our luck will run out. And as Kelly said, it's not if, it's when. And the only chance we really have to maintain that beautiful historic district is to have somebody come in who understands that's the issue.
And I will tell you, I think I understand it because of you. It's not because of me. I learned it from you. I learned what I saw, the way you guys handled it. I mean, you showed such grace to me and John. I mean, so many times I had people telling me, like newspaper people or even Senator Mikulski, when she came through, there's nowhere else in America where a county executive could walk through a disaster area without security. Well, we walk through it all the time because we're friends. And, we're trying to figure out how to help. We don't need someone to come down and protect us because we're part of our community. And, I think that's what you want in leaders. You don't want people to come in every once in a while and they need to have for protection because people don't know who they are. And not just real quick, I want to talk about how tremendously helpful the federal folks were during the 2016 and 2018. And it really was not about politics again. I used to tell Senator Mikulski, I'm getting tired of saying your name because you're doing so many great things for us. And she helped us tremendously get the FEMA money. But she would come through the town. And same thing with Senator Cardin. I said, we had a Republican governor who did a great job helping us. We had Democrat federal representatives, Elijah Cummings, rest in peace. Tremendously helpful. And it was so clear that politics was not at all an issue because we had a Democrat council member, Republican county executive, Republican governor, Democrat federal officials, and nobody cared who got the credit. And I was singing the praises of people who most of my party would say, "What are you doing, Allan?" Because they were there.
Senator Cardin called you the captain of the team. We were at I not surprising coming from Senator Cardin, but same thing, because he recognized what true leadership was being presented, and he didn't care that you were Republican. But I have to go back to you come to my project management, my management consulting roots here, and that is when I work with corporate executives. Times of trouble are really the best proving ground for leadership, and
we had a little bit of that.
We did, but the evidence is in the leadership that you showed. You talked about bringing me into the fold. These are leadership decisions that people don't make. Good leaders, only good leaders make those kinds of decisions, and that's just, I know I'm blowing a lot of smoke your direction. We're obviously good friends and have been for years, but from an academic, sort of case study. And people have done case studies on it. And part of those case studies, I was just on a call with FEMA just a few weeks ago who was talking about this. They asked me to participate on a guide they're putting out for elected officials in responding to disasters. So I can't understand why they reached out to me. But they a big part of it was really just about demonstrating leadership and visible, tangible leadership, which is what you did. And I think the contrast it's just stark. It really is just stark.
I want to describe to me what distilled the political element in the flood response. I only saw the current county executive on our street after the flood once. He was large camera crews with him. He was dressed very nicely, so he looked great. Certainly not ready to dig mud. And he walked down the street with the camera crews. He stopped and did a little on video thing, and he turned around and immediately got into a car and left. And that is the only time I ever saw him on the street.
Oh, he came to the ribbon cutting, don't you remember?
Yes, I do remember that. I have the pictures, yes.
But you're right. I was there, we were all there, and he was never there. But it's funny because as far as political party affiliation, I never knew. It never occurred to me to look, because you were part of the team, and it wasn't until the 2018 election that I was like, oh, look at that, okay, and went about my day. But because we're a team,
it shouldn't matter.
It should not.
Shouldn't matter.
It should not.
Shouldn't matter. I mean, we have these elections, and you go through it. But I'm telling you, folks, once the election's over, it's over. That's why John and I met before the swearing in. I mean, it's over. Now you got to get together and work together and do what's best for people. And I get so frustrated when people put themselves before the job. And it's not the way it should be.
The first time we met, I think you remember this, was actually at the county fair. I was running for the House at Delegate.
I was going to say, I thought it was before that election. You're right. Yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
And I think we had sort of met, quickly, introductory sort of thing. But we had a really funny conversation. I'm not going to recount the full extent of that conversation, but it was you stood out to me as one of the people I could trust talking to. And again, I knew you were Republican, but then we had a couple instances where we're at chamber meetings, and I think it was during the campaign for the county council, and you were running for county executive. And a couple of times we either ended up at the same table or in adjacent tables, and somebody would comment about, how important it is that we have these political forums, important that we had elected officials who could work together, who shared things. And we would look at each other across the room, and a couple of times we'd point out, we knew that, we shared the fundamental value. And I think that's what's important, that there's the ability to work with others. And you worked, I'd like to say you only worked with me on the council, but I know that wasn't the case. You worked with all of them, and you had 4 Democrats on the council. The county executive now has 4 Democrats. He can't work with that council. So even if he wanted to get some things done, he's got to work harder for it, because he hasn't established a relationship and be that sort of frank and open relationship with the people who can make things happen. It is it's an executive-centered county. Howard County is. The county executive has most of the power, but the legislature enables a lot of activity, and you knew that, so you worked closely. You did not dictate to us. You did not say it was my way or no way. And I think that's part of the problem now is you don't have a functioning relationship between those two entities that make the county work.
You get so much more done when you don't care about that. But no. When I say you don't care about who gets credit, it really doesn't matter. I had 4 budgets, all unanimous, so all 4 Democrats voted for all my budgets. And why? Because when I sat down with them and they'd say, well, this is really important to me. Okay, it's done. Because if that's important to you and we're a team, I'll make sure we get that to happen. Mary Kay Siggety, we'd come and have our monthly meetings, and she'd come up and we'd be talking for an hour and 15, 20 minutes. Because there's no agenda, we're just talking. Because I'm trying to learn what's important to you, and we can talk about what's important. And that's how you get a new courthouse built. That's how you get the Harriet Tubman School preserved. That's how you get the nonprofit collaborative, and you get all the community resources and campuses together. You get those big things happening because it's just a group of people. It's not my thing. It's the county's thing, and we need to get that back, and so hopefully we can. But I know I've taken a lot of people's time, and I appreciate you all being here, and you know how much I respect you and care about you, and all I can say is help is on the way.
I hope so. I do, because to me it's like I say, is Ellicott City going to survive, or is Ellicott City going to flood again? And we all, I think, sitting here, have been close enough to it to see what otherwise would be inevitable. So,
well, thank you.
We have great respect, proven leadership, independence. Good slogan. Very true.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks.